Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I think it has often been said that man is a creature of reason. But alas, not everyone out there has exercised their minds, have used their talent, put their talents to good use. Those who have been rewarded tenfold, a hundredfold. And those who have not, even the little they have, has often been taken away. I think Africa knows that we've had the short stick, the short straw in life. Countries like Zimbabwe, we are a failed state, blundering from pillar to post. There's no denying that the last 45 years for our independence have been a disappointment. Our expectation of what independence will bring have come to nothing. The country was confident it would become the South Korea of Africa. Instead, we've become the textbook case of failed state, one of Africa's worst case of failed state. This is a great source of disappointment. And there are many, many reasons one can give why we are a failed state. And I think we should explore them. We should have the courage to admit that we are a failed state and the courage to ask, why are we a failed state? Benjamin, welcome to the program.
Good day to you and good day to our viewers. Thank you for joining us. I agree with you, Zimbabwe is a failed state. And obviously there are many reasons, but let's face the truth. For me, the underlying reason is corruption and wrong priorities. That's it. I mean, if go back to the gold mafia documentary, and they tell you that Zimbabwe is losing 2 billion annually in gold trading. That is a huge chunk of change. That is huge. That is basically a big part or 90% of our debt right there in 1 year. And it is, that the documentary showed us without leaving, no doubt in our minds, because we saw the individuals. We know the individuals that are playing the parts. And they exposed it, and nobody did anything about it really. It was a little bit of hype here and there in our social circles. And then that's it. If we had paid as much attention to that and, united against that, just the same way we are uniting against a useless 2030 movement, or uniting with GESA, a ZANU PF of invite, we could be miles away. Would have been making, strides moving forward. But look, it was just something, and well, gone, here today, gone tomorrow. We did absolutely nothing about it. But guess what? If it hasn't increased, the corruption, of illicit gold trading, it's still here today. It's not going to go away because we decided not to look into it. It's going on. In fact, now we have just given it a green light because we don't care about it. So the problem is, and it comes back to what you were saying, we are creatures of reason and we are supposed to be, reasoning together. Gentlemen, we are losing so much. We are a failed state. We got to fight against this. Not to want to fight Mnangagwa, and Chiwenga and choose between the two. It's really sad. Come to think of it, Robert.
Well, here is somebody explaining why Africa is poor.
Sub-Saharan Africa paid $68 billion just servicing their debt in 2023. That's 6 times as much aid as they get from you. And every cent of that debt repayment has to be earned in dollars. You see how they use debt to try to keep the dollar afloat? Then add to that unfair trade agreements that undercut African agriculture, for example. Where like Africa grows 70% of world cocoa, but pockets only 3% of the profits. 70% of cocoa comes from Africa. They only get 3% of the profits. Then if you add the brain drain, doctors, engineers, bright minds, that's at least another $2 billion a year that's siphoned off to Western hospitals and Western tech sectors, Western professional sectors. They mine your raw natural resources and they mine your human resources. No, run the balance sheet. And the math is absolutely obscene. $10 to $12 billion in, $50 to $100 billion out in trade imbalances, $68 billion in debt payments, $50 to $80 billion in illicit wealth flows, tax evasion and so forth. Aid is just the tip that America gives you for being a good robbery victim. I steal everything you have, and then I call you poor. I call myself rich, and I call you poor when everything that's in my pocket I took from your pocket. And then I'll say, do you need a little help? I'll be willing to help you out.
I think the help we need is not so much in aid, but the help we need is in opening our own minds so we can do our own thinking. There is no doubt that Africa has been shortchanged. Countries like Zimbabwe, we are shortchanging ourselves. We export our raw materials with very little value added. And then we have to import them and pay an arm and a leg for the finished products. The example he gave there is really amazing. We produce 70% of the cocoa, and yet we get only 3% of the profits. The hard work is the growing of the cocoa, harvesting it, and then we sell it, and we only get 3% of the profits. That is really upset. We have got to get it out of our system, that the system is not working, and start thinking of ways of how we can improve the system instead of being locked into this system that is not working. And in some cases, we are even in denial that the system is not working. But even though that is part of the process of why we are a failure, we deny what we already know. We find scapegoats for our own failures. Zimbabwe's case is one example. We love blaming all our economic problems on sanctions. We should stop arguing about sanctions. We should also be asking, okay, even if it was not for sanctions, what have we done to stop the damage that is happening in our own country? One of them you mentioned, Ben, there, corruption. What have we done to stop corruption? We are the one who is selling all these unprocessed minerals, gold, everything, and we're selling it for a song, because most of these smugglers, they get the bulk of the money, and we only get the small change. That question, in my belief, in my view, is what needs to be asked. And I don't think we've been asking it often enough.
I mean, you got to look at it in a realistic perspective. 45 years in, Zimbabwe hasn't got, for example, in iron, they haven't got a value addition mechanism in place. We're still selling iron in raw materials or in just bars, nothing to talk home about. For many years, platinum had to go all the way to South Africa to go and be, experimented on and whatever they called it, because no money was coming from platinum for all that time. Yet, if you look back in when Zimbabwe, just before independence, you had Zim Always going on, you had Steel Force, you had Lancashire Steel. All these were value additions that were happening within the country. And we, instead of moving forward and making, a one-stop shop, we went ways back. They've all since closed. Zisco Steel, the biggest in Zimbabwe, it's gone. So do we then go and now blame to say the United States of America went and did this? And we know what happened. They stole everything blind from there. Willowvale, our own car, assembly plant. They stole everything blind. They destroyed it. GMB, the same thing. I mean, the list is there. The names are there. And it's all ZANU-PF. Now, since they have finished, all these big companies, they are now selling mining rights for T-shirts during campaign season. You can mine whatever or wherever you want, as long as you give us a T-shirts to give to the people. You can never continue blaming the next guy for all your wars. There's got to be something wrong with you. Why you? I mean, and I always refer to the Gold Mafia documentary. For those that, haven't seen it, it's a 4-part series. You will see the guys that are doing it. You will see who are being named. You will see the shady characters. You will see how the money is being siphoned out of Zimbabwe. That is not America. That is Zimbabweans and unscrupulous individuals outside. So this narrative to say, and obviously, look, there is nobody that is going to give you cheap, loans, especially when it comes to the IMF, given that Zimbabwe is a very bad debtor. We are the guys that we know there is no food on the table. We will buy 700 vehicles for each other. We're failing to pay debt, but every single time we will find thousands and thousands of cars for us to go campaigning. Who in their right mind would give you money when you are spending money that you do not have? They look back at your industry. Will you be able to pay back? What are your assets? Your assets are deep in the ground. Those are not assets unless you find a way to bring them up, of which Zimbabwe is not doing. $400,000, to give to ministers, judges. A week after that day, they're all out of a job. Who does that? Who gives a loan to somebody that is out of a job? Say 40,000 to MPs, all of them. We're spending more than we have that we can earn. So when we go and we ask, for debt, we are going to be charged as a bad debtor. Period. So it makes sense that they're only protecting their investments. And by the way, when we decide to sell, we sell at our price. So you cannot blame the purchaser that comes and purchases because of the poor, prices that you have put across. Zimbabwe is a failed state, and it all comes down again. Corruption.
Well, there is one African leader who at least had the common sense to see what is wrong with Africa. And to see the way out of this cycle of corruption, mismanagement, and poverty. This was Tanzania President Mwalimu Julius Nyerere. He said in one of his speeches that education provided must encourage the development in each citizen of three things: an inquiring mind, an ability to learn from others, from what others do, and reject or adopt it for our own needs, and the basic confidence in his own position as a free and equal member of society. When you look at some of our African leaders, you can see that this buffoon has no clue what is the problem, because they seem to be going through the system over and over again. They've not learned anything. If anything at all, the fight for independence was the fight for power. And once they got into power, that's all that mattered. 45 years after independence, the country is sinking into the abyss. And a buffoon like Mnangagwa has no clue what is going on. If anything at all, he's making the situation worse. When he took over from Mnangagwa, from Mugabe in 2017, people thought, okay, he has identified what the problem is. And two of the key problems was corruption and the failure to hold free, fair, and credible elections. So, what did he promise? He said zero tolerance to corruption. And we're going to hold free, fair, and credible elections. And yet, 8 years down the line, many people out there would admit that corruption in Zimbabwe has gone into overdrive. It was bad during Mugabe's time, but it's even worse now under Mnangagwa. As for free, fair, and credible elections, he did nothing. He did not implement even one token reform to ensure elections were free, fair, and credible. He blatantly rigged the 2018 elections and has since rigged the 2023 elections. And now he's even trying to stay in power by extending his stay in power beyond the stipulated two-term limits. If we're talking of Zimbabwe as a failed state, one of the main reasons we have given here why we are a failed state is corruption and the failure to have leaders who are accountable, competent to run the nation's affairs. And one of the reasons why we are stuck with the same corrupt individual is a failure to hold free, fair, and credible elections. And yet those are the very things that Mnangagwa has sought to undermine. All he can think about is how to stay in power. And so we started at the beginning by talking about one of the strengths, the virtues of men. A man is a creature of reason. And yet when you look at a buffoon like Mnangagwa, you honestly cannot pretend that we've got anyone here with that ability to reason. And you entrust the nation's destiny in such a buffoon, you're asking for trouble. We are a failed state because we have some of the worst leaders one can think of. We've entrusted power into the hands of buffoons. We have no clue what our problems are, much less how to get out of them. And so we are now stuck and have been going round and round in circles.
I think what's worse off is people that have no ambition and, to cap it up, are clueless about it. You know, you look at Zimbabwe at independence, a country that was to be the next Singapore or Malaysia. We had everything set. A currency was strong. Our agricultural sector was one of the best. We ruined everything. And we could not see it when the ruins just started. Here we are now down the line. We are celebrating a trababalus. We are celebrating an extension. In fact, we are now willing to give the president more time because he created an extension where other roads, major roads leading to tourist, destinations, have all but collapsed. The question now is, as a people, do we know what is really wrong? Are we doing anything to fight that kind of a corruption that we know is existing? $2 billion every year just in gold. And Zimbabwe has many other minerals. Nobody knows how lithium is being mined right now. All we hear is we have lithium. What is happening it? Who is being held accountable for it? We don't ask those questions because we are clueless ourselves. Yet here we are, uniting to fight Mnangagwa and Chiwenga, choosing between the two. Oh, it's a really sad state of affairs. It's a really sad state of affairs.
Well, somebody has often said that countries like Zimbabwe, we are trying the impossible. We are trying to lift ourselves up with our bootstraps. We are trying to be a prosperous nation and yet keep the same failed political system. Until we change the failed system, until we have competent leaders, development, political stability will remain a mirage. That is the truth. We in Zimbabwe have had the misfortune of having failed, corrupt, incompetent, tyrannical, and murderous ZANU-PF thugs as the ruling party. The people in the late 90s realized that we needed to change the political system. And they rightly argued that we needed to elect opposition leaders who will implement the democratic reforms necessary to push through to end the ZANU-PF dictatorship. And we were right in that. But unfortunately, the individuals we elected have turned out to be corrupt, incompetent, and utterly, utterly useless. And we, the people, have failed to see that failure. And hence the reason why 25 years after independence, 25 years since we elected the likes of Morgan Tsvangirai and his colleagues, we still have not got even one single token democratic reform implemented. And ZANU-PF is able to blatantly rig the elections. We have got to realize that if we want to end the failed state, we, the people, have got to elect competent leaders. This idea that we can somehow prosper with the same failed, corrupt, incompetent ZANU-PF thugs, complete with their MDC, Triple C, corrupt, incompetent, and utterly useless sidekick is foolish, to say the very least. We want change, we have to earn it. And so I go back to the original statement I made at the beginning. That man is a creature of reason. But alas, not everyone has exercised that talent. Those who have, they've prospered. And those of us who have not, we have suffered. That is the reality. Think about it. Thank you very much. And I hope you'll be able to join us again tomorrow, same time, 6 p.m. UK time, 8 o'clock Zimbabwean time. Good night.